Hello class, this is the studio segment of Time in Hopewell for the students that are only working remotely. This is part 1. So our overall studio prompt, we are creating artwork using craft processes for the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. If you're working online only, you're creating a 1-foot by 1-foot artwork, and your artwork is based on a specific type of Hopewell artifact. Just so you know, the rest of the class are working together to make larger pieces. They're 2 feet by 2 feet, and there's a series of 8 of them that will be sent off to the park. Your work, since you are at home, you'll be keeping your work, so it will not be sent off. Unless you want it to be, and then I can probably do that. So we're working with a production studio format. Production studios are common in the art world. They are places where a team of artisans work together to create pre-designed artwork. And we are doing it this way because of our current school schedule, the amount of work that's required overall for this project, and that we have limited studio time before deadline. I have to have everything shipped out on March 5th. You will be working from a design brief, which means I am just saying this is the way you need to do it, and you have these patterns to choose from, but you can be a little bit creative. So when you're working online only, you are creating the mini works, and you're selecting a pattern that's based on the shell gorgets found at Hopewell. I am going to deliver the material kit to your home, your mailbox. Some of you have picked them up already. You will follow some of the processes we use, but the main process you use will be embroidery. So your shell gorget, they were circular jewelry that was worn in front of the neck like a necklace or a choker. And you can see on the mannequin, the gorget is at the bottom, it's large, and it's worn as a necklace. They were also worn much closer to the neck, like right in front of your neck. And this is an actual artifact, an example of one of them. Shell gorgets began to be worn during the Hopewell era, and then were developed further during the Mississippian era, which followed, and are still found in the regalia of some tribes of Native Americans, in particular the Cherokee. So you're going to choose one of these gorget patterns. There are 3 on this page and 2 on the next. On the left here we have got the woodpecker pattern that has the sun in the middle, and then the woodpecker heads around the sides. In the middle, there is a jaguar pattern. That is interesting because jaguars were not native this far north at the Ohio part of Hopewell during that time period. They were further spread in North America than they are today. Today, they are only very rarely found down on the New Mexico border between New Mexico and Mexico. But because the Hopewell sphere of influence and trading covered such a vast area, they did know about them. And some of the designs that they ran into in other places, they carried back with them. And that's why we have this jaguar gorget up there in Ohio. And then on the right, this is a triskel. In the middle, a triskel is this kind of swirly 3-prong thing. And it's found all over the world in different cultures, and this is the Hopewell version of it. These patterns are more figurative. The one on the left is a warrior. He has got his weapon in one hand, and he's holding the head of his enemy in the other. The one on the right is probably one of their shaman-type figures. And it's interesting because it's a transformative figure. At first, when you look at it on his head, you see the deer headdress. You've seen that on the one mannequin that has been in some of the slides. The deer headdress was a very important part of the Hopewell kind of regalia and belief. And then he's got these kind of feather wings coming out. And then, and this is the transformation part, when you follow him down, his leg actually turns into a bird claw. And he is holding something that kind of looks like the sun that's sort of taken apart. It would be interesting to know what this figure really was, but we don't know. If you choose this one, this outer edge that is damaged, just don't worry about it. Make it smooth like you see on the side here. You can tell that this leg went back. There's a hawk claw, so there was probably another hawk claw leg, but we don't know that, so just make that area smooth. When you look at these, even though these are from the Hopewell mounds, they have very distinctive design styles that are very similar to the Mayan and Aztec designs. And that's more evidence of this kind of cultural transference that was going on over a huge, huge area, much larger than people realized it was later on in years. So for your first studio today, your goals are to dye your substrate, which may take more than a day, depending upon what you choose to use for your dye. You're also going to create a paper pattern of the design, and you're going to follow the pattern to draw the design on the felt. So for the design, you're choosing one of these 5. So your materials and everything is in your kit but the dye. You have your 1x1 square of substrate. You have the fawn colored felt rectangle. It says square there, but they're referred to as squares even though they're rectangles. Embroidery floss, a needle, and some glue. You should have some of that left over from the book project. If you need more, let me know. And then for your dye, you're going to need strong coffee or tea or other dark liquid. How you get this, you would brew your coffee or tea. If it's tea, put the tea bags in, a little bit of water, not a whole lot of water that's hot, and then let it sit probably all day or even overnight. Coffee, it would be similar. Brew some coffee. You don't need a lot of it, like maybe a cup of coffee, but after you get that liquid, put it in a container, dump the coffee grounds in there with it, let it sit like overnight, and then strain it. Or you could use another dark liquid. If you're using something that's powdered, like a Kool-Aid type thing, use a dark color or mixed colors because you want a dark neutral color. And don't use a lot of water. Okay? You could also use watered down acrylic paint that's brown, or lots and lots of watercolor paint if you have it. So first of all, your substrate, and your substrate is your surface, and you are using Evelon, which is industrial microfiber nylon fabric. It is donated by companies to this project with the Park Service. It's some of their excess. So the first thing you're going to do, when your dye is ready, is you're going to dye the background with the dark liquid. So make sure that your liquid is ready. So you might have to wait a day if you're using coffee or tea. When you're ready to dye, put down newspaper or a towel to protect the surface you're working on. And then get your whole substrate, the whole little white square, wet by putting it under running water. You can just, run the water on top of it just so the whole thing is wet. And then use your brush to paint your liquid onto the surface. This fabric is very thirsty. It absorbs liquids very quickly and spreads them. So you have to be fast with it. And then put it on a newspaper or towel and let it dry. The big squares take overnight. Your square probably won't take as long. If it looks too light, because it does fade, then you might have to do several layers on it, or even put it in the liquid and let it soak overnight. So now we're moving on to the design, and this you do on day 1. You look at the photo of the gorget you selected, one of those 5 designs that I have up there, and using on a piece of paper or your sketchbook, trace a circle that's large enough to fit your felt rectangle with some left around the edges. So I used a small plate, one of our painting plates from art. You can see that it goes almost all the way to the edge. You don't want something tiny in the middle. You want it to be a pretty good size, but still fit on the paper. And then you're going to look at the photograph of the one you selected. I chose the one with the woodpeckers. And you're going to draw that onto your paper. And the reason why you draw it onto paper first is so that you can figure out how to draw it and solve some design issues. You can't erase on the felt. And it's okay if it's a little bit off. When you look at my example here, you can tell that I made the middle part too large, and therefore the square is too large and not wide enough. But the general design and the general idea is still there. It has all its parts, so that's okay. So now you're going to look at your felt. Felt is pressed material. It doesn't fray when it's cut. We use a blend of synthetic and wool felt in here. You're using the fawn gray color. And what you're going to do is use a pencil. A soft pencil works best if you have one. And you're going to trace the circle onto the felt. So the same thing you trace to create the big circle for your design, you trace that right onto the felt. And then you're going to draw the design onto the felt. So I stuck with what I drew because that's how it was sized out. And you can see I copied it directly onto the felt piece. So now that's ready for tomorrow when we start embroidery. So make sure you turn in, you photograph and upload your drawing, both the paper and on felt. When your substrate is dyed, you can come back to this lesson and upload a photo of that as well. Or you can upload a photo later on in a studio lesson. And it may take more than one day to get a good color working with the dye on your substrate. Okay? If you've got any questions, please let me know. Thank you.